So hello everyone, I'm very excited to be here today. And first I want to thank everyone from Adobe PhoneGap team for inviting me here. It's a great honor to speak here today. And also I'd like to thank PPK for organizing everything. Great pleasure so far. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you today about building PhoneGap apps with Vue.js and Framework7. And I've already heard that many of you are as well. So let's dive into it. First, a little bit about me. So Steve already gave a great introduction. Thanks a lot. I'm a freelance software engineer, and I post blogs and really like to create YouTube videos about development stuff. I studied media computer science at the University of Ulm. Now, media computer science is basically classic computer science with stuff like usability engineering and user experience design mixed into it. So that's probably the reason why I really love to create apps with user experience in mind. Yeah, in one of my last tutorials, I created a video on how to create a chat application using PhoneGap, Framework7, and Vue.js in just 20 minutes, which is pretty quick, I would say. So you can go into YouTube and just watch that if you want. And I've also made this chat application available to you today. If you want to try that out, you can just go to pgchat.eu and use your iPhone or Android or whatever, and you just can give it a try. And also, if you have questions, I don't know if we have time at the end, you can just post them there, and I will respond to them. Just keep in mind that these messages will be deleted after 12 hours or so. So, yeah. Yeah, please don't post anything. Yeah. All right, so I'll be mentioning quite a lot of different projects, tools, and whatnot. So you don't have to remember everything. It's enough if you just remember this one URL. But I don't know if you can take a picture, if it works or not. You can try. There's a link collection with URLs to all the pages that you need, like documentation and stuff. And I will also keep updating this. Still taking picture? All right. OK, before I start, this is very important for me. As I said, I will be presenting quite a lot of different projects. And I'm not a member of any of these teams that create these projects. I'm also not a creator. I'm just a free and independent developer. I'm part of the communities of these projects. So I just hang around on GitHub and help people with their GitHub issues. Or I send in a pull request sometimes. But yeah, everything I say here is just my personal opinion as a free developer. All right, so let's dive in. Probably most of you have already heard about Vue.js, and there's a lot of buzz going around it currently. And it's one of the uprising new component-based MVVM frameworks. Actually, it's not that new. It's just getting very popular currently, especially in China. Vue.js is incredibly popular in China. Basically, everyone is using their Vue.js, and there are a lot of Chinese people out there, so that's quite some. The creator of the framework is someone called Ethan Yu. He's basically the only maintainer of the project, so it's a one-man show. That can be a good thing sometimes, but it's just something that you have to keep in mind when you use it. Like it's different to React, for example, where you have a big company, you have Facebook supporting it. Yeah, so why is Vue.js so popular? I personally think there are three key benefits. First of all, it's incredibly easy to use. Front-end development has become so complicated in the last years. Remember the old days when all you had to do is just set up an HTML file and add your jQuery.js file into it, and that's it, you were good to go. It took like 1 minute. But these days, it's very, very difficult and complicated. And with Vue.js, things are getting a little more easier. So you can already see that or tell that by just looking into the documentation, which is not very long. You can read through the whole thing in like 1 or 2 hours, and then that's it. It's also very fast. In the documentation, the Vue.js team has a section where they compare it to other frameworks, and they claim that it's about 2 times faster than React in rendering performance. I don't know about React Fiber, though, which is completely new, so we have to look about that. Yeah, and the first, and this, for me personally, this is the biggest point, there's nothing new that you have to learn, right? It's just plain HTML and CSS and JavaScript that you have to use. You can use other stuff like Sass or ES6, TypeScript, whatever you want, but you don't have to, which is a great thing. If you compare it to other frameworks, like for example, Angular, if you use Angular, you most likely have to learn TypeScript. And if you use React, you have to learn JSX. So with Vue, you can just get started without learning a new language, except for the API, of course. That's something you have to learn. Yeah, you can see this in the following example. On the left side, you see some Vue.js code. This will run natively in the browser because there's nothing special about it. And on the right side, there's some JSX code, which will probably not run in the browser because the browser cannot interpret JSX code, right? And so for React, you always need some kind of pre-processing process, which I personally am not such a big fan of. Yeah, I'm also not a big fan of tools. Now, what do I mean with tools? It's the everyday stuff like Webpack, Babel, Grunt, Gulp, and whatnot. I personally always feel like the stuff is getting in my way because I spend so much time setting everything up and also keep maintaining it. It's just so time-consuming, especially when you change something or there's a new update, and you have to ship your product tomorrow, right? And something suddenly breaks and it doesn't work anymore. So that's a big pain. And I think that the less complicated tools are and the less tools you use, the less difficult development becomes. So let's have a look at the current state. Carrie already told us in the morning a little bit about ES6 modules. And I think we're already very close to be able to use Vue.js in the browser natively. As Carrie already said, we can use ES6 modules in 10.1 on the desktop Safari and 10.3 on iOS mobile. On the other browsers, we are very, very, very close. Chrome, Edge, and Firefox, they basically support it. They have it built in, but you have to enable it through a flag. So all they have to do is just get it production ready and just remove the flag, and that's it. And I'm very excited about this because if this is possible, then we can easily use stuff like import-export in the browser, and we wouldn't need stuff like Babel or Webpack anymore. All right, so now this is obviously a PhoneGap conference, so what about the state on Cordova WebView? And I really like to say thank you to Carrie for providing the following information to me, so I can share it with you. And on iOS, it's kind of mixed bag. On UI WebView, obviously it doesn't work because it's just not supported, it's too old. On WK WebView, it's a different story. If you serve your ES6 modules from the local file system using the file pattern, you seem to get a course failure. So obviously that doesn't work. And you can try to install a local plugin for PhoneGap and serve it via HTTP, but then it seems like you're getting a 403 error. What seems to work is that you can get ES6 model from an external source. But who would do that? I mean, the whole purpose of building a PhoneGap app is serving everything from local. You don't want to get all your scripts from a remote server. So, nah, not really. And on top of that, there's no support on Android at all. Not yet, at least. So that's on the Web3 part. currently not possible. So what's the outcome? On browsers, I think we're in a good way. WebView definitely needs to catch up, so until then, we can use, of course, Vue.js natively with ES5 in the browser if you want to. You can use it with ES6 natively, but you have to omit the ES6 modules, so you have to kind of put everything into one file. Or you can use the classic Webpack bubble setup, which I personally use as well currently. Yeah, and maybe in the future, maybe in browsers at the end of this year or beginning of 2018, we can use both natively, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, simplicity is something that has made Vuejs incredibly popular. Everyone likes simple stuff, right? Johnny does too. So have a look at popularity. If we just compare the star ratings on GitHub between React and Vue, we can clearly see how Vue has caught up in the past days, in the past months. We're very, very close here. And if we look at this peak here at the end, this was around December 2016. So Vuejs is very caught up to React these days. All right, so now if you want to create an application using PhoneGap and Vue, you can easily do so. You can just fire up just a standard PhoneGap application. You add in your Vue.js file, and that's it. But you probably want to do a little bit more than that. You need a set of UI components. Now, what you can do, you can create these components on your own. Sure, that takes time. But you can also pick one of these, which are very popular. Probably one of the most well-known are Semantic and Bootstrap. But to be honest, I personally, I'm not a big fan of these. And the reason for this is that I noticed that many libraries seem to fail to emulate the native look and feel of real apps. And if we're really honest, I think that that's what most of us are trying to do when they build PhoneGap applications, and that we're trying to emulate the native look and feel as good as possible. So I put up this list. This is nothing official. This is just a personal list for me. And these are requirements that I usually set when I pick new frameworks. So obviously, performance is very important. No one wants a stuttering application. I want a native look and feel. I want my technology to, it should be easy to use, obviously. I want my application and my technology to scale when my project grows. I want it to be maintainable in a long term. It should have a good quality of documentation, including many examples if possible. Really love examples. And if possible, it should be open source with an active community. And that's when I found out about Framework7, and boy, was I blown away. It was around 2013, and I landed on their website, and they had this little demo on their homepage where I could play around with the components, and it looked so good. It was smooth as butter, and I really loved the way the components looked. So what exactly is Framework7? It's a little bit more than just UI components. It also comes with a custom router. You might be wondering, why would I need a custom router? There's already one built into Vue.js, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. Yeah, and the way these components feel, it's very, very close to native. You can try that on your own. I will show you a kitchen sink demo later where you can see how everything looks like. And the feature that I personally really like is that it comes built in with theming for both iOS and Android. So you don't have to change anything, actually. It's already built into Framework7. And all you have to do is, if you want to change from iOS to material design, you only have to flick a Boolean. I think it's called material. And you globalize material equals true. And that's it, right? And that's what we want. And I think you have to use a different CSS file, but that's about it. Yeah, there are various versions of Framework7. The original base version comes with something that's called DOM7. Now, DOM7 is a library that allows you to actively and directly manipulate the DOM, much in the way jQuery did it, or does it. You can do that if you want to, but I do not recommend it. And instead, obviously, I recommend the Vue.js version. So yeah, let's have a look at the demo here. You can just go to framework7.io and you will see this demo on the top right corner, and you can play around with it. So you can see all the components, and you see it's already very smooth. You can flip to material design, and in this markup, there's nothing that's changing. You don't have to change your JavaScript, you don't have to change your HTML or anything. You just flip this Boolean. Just remember when you visit the page with a mobile phone, first pick the theme that you want to use, and then click the same button again, okay? And it will take you to a full screen view. Otherwise, this thing here, this is just an iframe, okay? So make sure you click that button twice. All right, now the reason why I personally like Framework7 so much is the attention to detail that the creators put into this. And I want to show you this with a little example. And don't look too much at the components. I want you to look at this animation. Now, this is nothing special, it's just a sliding animation, right? But if you look very, very, very closely, what you'll see is when the page slides in, it will start very quickly, then it accelerates, and then it slows down. Okay? And this is exactly the way how iOS handles animations. For example, you will never see in iOS a linear transition. That's an animation which doesn't change its speed while it animates. And these kind of details, that's something that really adds into the user experience. I mean, I think we've all been there as users, right? You use an application, and sure, I mean, if this animation would be linear, your application probably still would work, no problem. But it would kind of feel a little bit weird. You probably cannot pinpoint what's wrong, but something's weird. It's the same as if you're a Mac user and you're using Java desktop application. I think every Mac user can immediately tell that this is not a Mac application, this is a Java application, just by the way it feels. And you really have to go this extra mile, these final 2%, to go from an okay-ish application to a really good application. So details really matter. All right, so now we have our final missing component, which is Framework7 with a plugin which is called Framework7 DashView. So you need the base version of Framework7 and the plugin. What this plugin provides is basically a bridge between Framework7 and Vue. And as I said before, it also comes with a custom router. Now, if you want, you can use the custom the router that's shipped with Vue.js. It probably works fine, but it's not recommended to use it with Framework7 Vue because the custom router has a lot of improvements under the hood regarding performance and all these page transition and stuff. So yeah, I could recommend to use the custom router, but if you opt for the Vue.js router, it's probably fine as well. All right, so enough blah blah, more code. All right, so now this is a very, very, very simple example. It's also entirely static, so there is no Webpack or anything involved into this, just for demo purposes. And as you can see, what you need is, you need the style sheets for iOS or material design. So if you want to use material instead, all you have to do is just replace iOS with material, and that's it. Then in the body, we create a new div with the ID app. So this is where we bootstrap our application, just the same way you would do it in Angular or in React. And then we add our 3 JavaScript that we need, which are the Vue.js file, Framework7 JavaScript file, and the plugin. Yeah, so in this demo, we're going to basically, not build, but I'll show you how I created the view that you can see on the right side, which is just a screenshot of the chat app. And on the left side, you see the markup, which creates the page on the right. And as you can see, it's not much that you have to do. All these components, like the page component, for example, it comes all from Framework7 bundled as Vue.js components. So obviously, for each of the messages here, for each of these bubbles, we create a new F7 message component. You will see later that we have a messages array, which stores all the messages that we have. And we're also using some data binding here. Now, this is Vue.js code, and we bind the message text to the label of the bubble. And everything that you see here, which starts with the V dash, now that's Vue.js, whoops, this is Vue.js code, okay? And obviously on the bottom, we have this Framework7 message bar component, and this creates the input that you can see down here and the send button. So that's no rocket science at all, but it's very easy to do. All right, now that we have our markup, we need to initialize everything. The first thing you have to do is tell Vue that would you like to use the plugin. So you do that with the first line here. Then you create a new Vue instance. And you tell Vue which is the root element that you would like to bootstrap from. You pass in the template that we have created before on here. And then we passed in an empty messages array initially. Then we have 2 methods defined. One is the onCreate method. This one comes from Vue.js. And it's basically very simple to componented mount from React. So it gets called when your component has been created. And onSend is just an event listener that gets called when the user clicks the send button in your chat application. And yeah, that's it. That's all you have to do for creating such a view. And you might have noticed that we didn't write any CSS code at all. And this is typical for this technology stack when you use Framework7. All the components, they're already pre-made, and I usually do not change anything. No font size changing, margin, paddings, no nothing. I just use the components out of the box, and I get the native look and feel, and that's it. Now, if you want to get started, you can basically start completely from scratch, as I've shown you before. You can also use one of the templates. One is provided by Holly Shinsky, who's also down here. Holly's version is a very static version, and I recommend it if you want to get started the first time, because it's very simple to use. All you have to do is basically just initialize a new PhoneGap application through the command line interface, and you pass in the URL to the GitHub repo, and that's it. It just works. Now, if you want a little bit more enhanced version, for example, using Webpack, you can use one from Oguz Özcan. I think he's from Turkey. He's a part of the Framework7 community, and he provides this template. All right, so looking into the future, I've been talking a little bit to Vladimir. He is the main lead developer of Framework7, and he teased a little bit what's coming in the future. One is a so-called visual app builder. This allows you to create user interfaces just by click and pointing. So this might be interesting for designers. There's also an own command line interface coming up. Currently, you have to use the PhoneGap CLI, but yeah, we'll see about the new one from Framework7. And there's also a version 2 coming up of Framework7. You can only look into it. There's a GitHub repository, which is publicly available, and you can look into the code. I don't know what features exactly they're working on, but version 2 is coming up definitely. All right, so yeah, this one is really important from my perspective. Now, Framework7 is not that popular, and I personally don't understand why, because it's such a great piece of technology, in my opinion at least. So I really welcome everyone to try it out and see for yourself if you like it or not. And if you like, you're of course welcome in the rather smaller community, but very active. You can check out our forums on forum.framework7.io and the GitHub pages, of course. And yeah, of course, there's one more thing before we end. If you're a React developer, then this might be interesting for you. There's a guy called Ben Compton who's also part of the Framework7 community, and he contributed a plugin for React that basically does the same thing as Framework7 Vue does for Vue, but for React. So if you're a React developer and you would like to use all the components from Framework7 with React, then I definitely recommend to try that out. All right, so that's it. Thanks a lot for listening. If you have any questions, you can, of course, raise it now, or just post it to the chat app if you want, or you can email me as you wish. Thank you.
Any questions from the audience?